In this video, we're going to take a quick look at how to use the new cloud workspaces inside of Airplane. So you can still create Airplane tasks as you always have been able to locally using your code editor, but a brand new feature of Airplane is the ability to actually create tasks inside the browser. So if you're logged into your Airplane account and you click on New Task, you're dropped right into Airplane's studio environment where you can choose exactly what kind of task you want to create. For this demo, we will be creating a REST API task because we want to give our users the ability to look up barcodes using this UPC database. So when we have our new task here, we will click on REST, we'll enter a name, and if you want a brief description, and we'll make sure that we select cloud workspace here. Again, you have cloud and local, your two different choices, but because we want to write this task and see it run directly inside the browser, we'll choose cloud. And when we click continue, we can see that we get the creation of our task right here inside Studio. Now that we've created our task, we need to add some information about it. Most notably, we need to add a parameter that will allow the users of our task to insert a search term for us to look up barcodes. So we'll just call this search term, and because it's just going to be a short bit of text, we'll select short text as the type and make sure that it's required. So it's needed to actually run the task itself. We click on add, we can see that now our task has a search term parameter associated with it that users will be able to type into once we get ready to execute that. There are a couple other things that we need to define inside of this configure tab, but the next most important one is we need to pick a REST API. Inside of Airplane, you can create what are called resources, and a type of that resource is an API. So we already have our barcode database set up as a resource. If you don't have a resource set up, you can create one right within Studio, but we have our REST resource set up to query the barcode API. So we're going to select barcode DB. And then we just need to look up the specific documentation for the endpoint that we want to hit. So we want to hit the search endpoint, and it looks like that means we need to do /search and provide it with a query URL parameter. So back over in Studio, we can specify that there, and then we can also add the query. Now this is where we need to take the value that the user has entered in the search term box and pass it to the API in the form of a query. So we can use Airplane's templating here to access params, and then you see our search term slug here. We can do .search term, and it will autofill that for us so that we know that we're getting that syntax exactly right. The next thing we need is to actually pass an API key to our Airplane task. So we have our API key set up as a config variable inside of Airplane. So you can see here that if we go down to our config section and we say we want to make our barcode database API key available to our task, we can do that by specifying API key, and then same with our templating from before, we can say configs.barcodedb API key. Now that we have that configuration set up, the last piece is to decide if we want this to run on a schedule or not. If it's a recurring task that needs to run every day or every couple hours, you can set Airplane up to run that task automatically, but since we just want to run this task on demand, we'll leave that off for now. If you need to be able to trigger this task remotely, you can also add a webhook to the task itself so that you can run it anytime you need to. With all of that configured, we can now run our task directly from within Studio as well to make sure that it works. So if we put in, for example, dog treats as our search term and click on execute, Airplane will run the task and it will return the top barcodes for dog treats. So this is looking pretty good, but it's still only available to us in our Studio environment. So if we click back over to the task itself, now that everything's looking good and we've tested the execution of the task, we can go ahead and click on create. And what this will do is basically create the task inside of our Airplane account and make it available to the rest of our team.